Hello and welcome to One Called Mama. I am your host, Sam, and I am so thankful that you decided to join us today. I have another guest with me, and her name is Kayla.
Hello.
Kayla has a very beautiful story to share with you guys today. It's something that when I was pregnant with my son, I was following your story.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just... it was so much.
It's a lot. It's a lot of a story. It's a lot.
Yes, and I am really excited to share it with you guys today. I think y'all will be blessed. So tell us a little bit about you, Kayla, before we jump in.
Yeah. So my name is Kayla. I'm married to Jim, and we have an amazing little boy named Gideon. Our story pretty much revolves around him. The very nutshell version of his story, because I think we're going to get into kind of some of the details throughout the rest of our conversation, is he was born at 22 weeks and 1 day gestation. So he was born at a level 4 NICU in downtown Fort Worth, and he is the record setter for the earliest born preemie to survive at that hospital. There have been others in the country that have been born earlier, but it's not common. He wasn't the smallest. There was another baby that I know of that was smaller.
Oh my gosh.
He was born at 1 pound. 1 pound, and it was 1 pound 0.2 ounces or something like that. It was he was teeny tiny. He could, once we were able to hold him, he could fit in my bra, and we just held him like this. We spent a total of 14 months in the hospital.
Wow.
So it was part of the time in the NICU, and then, so 6 months in the NICU and then 8 months in the children's hospital. He does have a tracheostomy.
Okay.
And so that is a tube that goes into his trachea and then allows a ventilator to help him breathe. So he used to be on the ventilator 24/7. Now he's not, which is amazing.
It's so exciting.
It's so exciting. It gives so much more freedom to life. And he also has a G button. He's able to take some bites and eat some things by mouth, but primarily all of his nutrition comes through a G button into his tummy.
Okay.
And so that is the nuts and bolts version of his story. But there is there was lots of ups and downs and
absolutely
God moments and scary moments and happy moments.
Definitely not. He's your first and only at this moment. Definitely not how you planned for any of that to go.
No. My sister is a midwife. My other sisters had their babies at home, and that was our plan. And then we went into labor at, I forget we were in the hospital for 10 days before he was born. So 21 and 22 and 1 minus 10. That's when we first went into the hospital, and just our whole life changed in a moment. And it could have gone a lot of different directions, but God brought us down this path, and it's been a hard path, but a beautiful path.
A very against the odds, because honestly, you face that a lot with just statistically. A baby that's born that early doesn't usually make it. So you beat that odd, and you had the doctors kind of talking in your ear. Some of the doctors, you had fantastic doctors that did not do that to you, but some doctors, realistically, they're gonna tell you the truth. And the truth was, that's his viability, right?
And so that is, our neonatologist used the term that Gideon is on, what was the term that he used? The edge of viability. He had, because your lungs are one of the last things to develop.
Right.
And you have the air sacs in your lungs. He had just enough air sacs to be alive. And so he was on the edge, and there is there was a lot of just waiting and seeing what would happen. A lot of doctors and nurses, they always would mention comfort care.
Yeah.
Which comfort care in the NICU is basically take them off life support and make them as comfortable as possible. And you hold them until they're gone.
Yeah.
But we knew that was not an option. There were many times I prayed. I was like, God, I cannot be the one to make that choice. That is life and death, and I can't make that. So if you want him, you just take him.
Yeah.
Because I can't make the choice.
Right.
And he didn't take him.
No.
But we had every odd stacked against us. He had a grade 3 and 4 brain bleed when he was born.
Oh, that's right. Oh my gosh, I forgot about that.
And so that was rough. Because that is some of the highest level of a brain bleed that you can have. And for like an adult, catastrophic. For a full-term baby, could be catastrophic. But when Gideon was born, his brain was not fully developed. They showed us an ultrasound of his brain and he didn't have squiggles. Like, I didn't know your brain is first smooth and then the squiggles form. So his brain was smooth. And so our neonatologist was like, we don't know what this means. This level of a brain bleed, something, like he will struggle with something.
Wow.
It could be he's just struggles with math. Or it could be that he has severe cerebral palsy, severe cognitive issues, and have no quality of life. And we don't know which direction it's going to go. And
now?
And now he's doing great.
Nothing has really evidenced that has affected him yet?
Or? Not to that degree. He has, they call low tone. So he's very, very small.
Yes.
And he's starting to walk and he can crawl and he can do it, and his confidence is building. He can pull to stand.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's just happened in the last month or two, being able to really pull to stand. He has a little walker, and just this morning we had a gait trainer delivered, which is just like a contraption that's like a walker on steroids.
Okay, yeah. I can kind of picture that in my head, I think.
And so he is starting to walk, and we're going to get some ankle supports for him. Wow. But he can do it. It's just, it takes him longer to learn these physical abilities. But he is so smart. Like, we are constantly impressed now that he's learning to communicate more.
Yeah.
It's hard for him to talk with the trach, but he can say some sounds. But his our speech therapist is always really impressed because she can put out different things. And it started with, point to the fish or whatever. And, he started getting all of those right. And then she started doing like, it's a fish in a car and something. And she's go, okay, which one swims in the water? And he'd point to the fish. Which one drives on the road? And he'd be able to point to the car. And I'm like,
that's great.
I didn't teach you this. Where did you learn this?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So he's starting to pick up on things and just figure things out. And it has been wild the last few weeks.
Just watching him.
Yes.
So I don't think we said this. How old is Gideon?
Gideon is 2.5.
He's 2.5.
So he's 2.5. Yes, but he was born 4 months early. Right. So once they hit 2, you kind of stop using that corrected age. But with him, it was so drastic. Yeah. It does still greatly affect.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
Yeah.
Wow. What are some of the ways, like, I really, because there's so much that happened in Gideon's life. If I know that if any of you listening followed me on Facebook when all of this was happening with Gideon, you don't post as much. I don't think my algorithm sees your posts as much.
I haven't done as much in recent months.
Right. But Kayla and Jim and the family would post updates, and there was, prayer chains going, there were meal trains going, there were fundraisers going for you guys, because y'all lived at the hospital, for over a year. And so y'all followed, some of y'all listening followed the updates from Kayla and the family and what Gideon was going through and how he was doing. And so we could spend probably 3 episodes talking about everything that happened with Gideon, all of the things, all of the stuff he went through, all the things you and Jim went through. But I really wanted this episode to be about highlighting those God moments where you really saw the redemption and the ways that he was just providing for them. And I know there was a lot. And we talked about like, just pick like your 3 that really just stood out to you that meant a lot. And let's talk about some of those now and kind of just, and we'll just kind of let it flow and see where it takes us.
So I think one of the big ones is actually more Jim and what he experienced. I had talked to my husband last night, and to him, this was one of the biggest things, is how clearly he heard the Lord in certain situations. Whenever I first went into labor and we went to the hospital and they said, "You're having this baby. We will lay him on your chest and you will hold him, and that's it." Wow. He said of course we're crying, but he said he heard the Lord, the Holy Spirit talk to him and say, "It's not happening today."
Wow.
And so he had to just say, "Okay, it's not happening today." Wow. And then we were in the hospital for 10 days, and there were a couple more times that we thought like, "Okay, it's today." And he said each time it's not happening today. And then the morning that it was finally like, okay,
things were gearing up.
Yeah, my water broke and it was happening. He then sensed today's the day, but it's gonna be okay.
Wow.
And so he just had to lean into that. And throughout Gideon's whole life, even up until the last news that we got, one of us had a peace. Just about every time we got really hard news, one of us would be spiraling, and one of us would get that, "I feel okay, like it's hard and I am crying and I do not like this and I don't want this, but I feel peace," when it doesn't make sense. And that's when it's the Lord, is peace beyond understanding. And you're like, "I shouldn't have peace, but I do."
And it's interesting that it was always just one of you. Because to me, that's the grace of God. That he's allowing one of you to process and feel the emotions, right? And you're both feeling it. You don't not feel it, but it's okay. You can be the one that gets to be in your emotions right now today, and then tomorrow it's gonna be be the other one. That's so interesting.
So we always pretty much were able to flip-flop of one of us feeling okay. And so that happened throughout. Even just a few months ago, Gideon's kidneys have never been great, just due to being born so premature. And the last labs that we got, the nephrologist was like, "Okay, his kidneys are functioning about 30%, and they're probably not going to get better at this point." And so the hope is that they will maintain 30% for years, and then he will need a kidney transplant at some point in the future.
Wow.
And so I'm like crying, and then Jim was like, "I feel a peace about it." And that, leading up to that, I had been one of the most consistent I had been in reading my Bible and praying every day for a while. I've struggled with the consistency of it.
Yeah, me too.
It's real, but I was doing so well, and I could tell the difference that it made in my ability to take that news. And even though it was really hard for a moment, process through it and trust the Lord. And not be angry at him, because there have been a lot of angry conversations we've had with the Lord. But luckily he doesn't get angry back.
No, he knows you're mad. Like, he knows. The idea that we should hide anything from God is hilarious to me. And we all do it in some level or not. But
Jim had another one early on. We were there until evening. He was doing all right. We go home. Jim would get up usually at 4 and get ready for work, go to the hospital, and hold Gideon, because we could only hold him once a shift.
Yeah.
And so he would get there, 5 o'clock, hold him, and then go to work. And then I would get there later in the day and be there for the bulk of the day. And Jim said he arrived and he just felt something was wrong, something was off. And so he told the nurse, he's like, hey, something isn't feeling right. I can't pinpoint what it is. And so the nurse did all of the checks that she could do. And she said, nothing is wrong in the vitals that I can check, but I trust your instincts. So we're going to run some tests.
Good for her.
Yeah. The nurses in the NICU were beyond the way that they communicated. That's a whole other thing. But the nurses and doctors were top notch in their communication with us and with each other. It was amazing. They did some tests and it came back that Gideon had a severe kidney infection. This is why his kidneys aren't very good. And it had gone sepsis.
Oh no.
Yeah. And so this was one of the times that he almost died. And he was showing no signs, but Jim had a check that something was off.
Wow.
And if it wasn't for Jim having the check, listening to it, requesting it, the nurse listening and doing the tests, and them finding this infection earlier, he wouldn't have made it, because it was already a very scary moment where he almost didn't. So, and then some other God, I'm like trying to think of, okay, what are the big God moments? I had mentioned to you earlier, just the doctors that we got, because in those situations, you don't choose your doctors. You're just kind of given whoever's on call, and especially those first doctors. Oh my goodness. We were blessed with some amazing doctors from start to finish. A little bit more happened once we transferred to the children's hospital, and there was a bit more drama that went on. But at that point, I had seen good doctors and I had seen what it felt like to be listened to.
Right.
And so I knew how to advocate for myself.
Yeah.
I knew how to advocate for Gideon because I had seen it done.
Yeah.
In these other doctors that were kind and listened. And so God's hand every step of the way. Oh, okay. One big moment.
Oh, okay. Yes.
This one, and then we can go on. This was early on. So when Gideon was born, they can't do an IV or a PICC line because they have no skin.
Yeah.
Their skin is it's kind of like a gummy bear texture. So I would call him a little gummy bear just because it was too fragile. And so at first, everything goes through the umbilical cord, and they have IVs and all the things through there. And typically they only want that to last 1 week because then it falls off.
Yeah.
1 week, he was not.
No.
He couldn't have it yet.
No.
So they waited 10 days and it's still, his skin was not ready. 14 days. And they were like, okay, we're going to try because it is only holding on by a spit and a prayer. And so we knew that they were going to try the PICC line with the team at that hospital. And we thought they were going to try later in the day. And on our way to the hospital, they call and say, hey, we tried the PICC line and it didn't work. And I mean, that's how he's getting nutrients. That's how he's getting, because at that point,
everything.
Because I mean, they were having to do everything through IV, but it was going through his umbilical cord at first. If they couldn't get the PICC line.
Well, yeah, what do you do?
Yeah. And I mean, you have to realize his arm was the size of my pinky.
Oh my gosh.
I have a picture of his arm and my pinky, and I mean, it was the same size. It was crazy. And then their plan was there was a specialist team at the children's hospital next door, and they were going to try and have them come over the next day and use their special stuff. But that had never been done. That team had never crossed over to this hospital. And so we get there and we walk in. It turns out the team is already there setting up. And we're like, what's going on? What's happening? And they're like, we had some free time. So we just went ahead and came over. Okay. And we're going to just try it. And we're like, oh, okay. And so they don't let you be in there because, it's 10 people.
Yeah, it's too much.
So, we were waiting downstairs and then we come back up and it worked. Wow. And they were also, the nurses were so excited because that was now setting a precedent for that team to come over and help, because Gideon was too fragile to wheel. There's a like a bridge hallway that connects the hospitals. So babies are going over for surgery and stuff like that, but they never came over here. And so they were excited because now whenever other babies were too fragile to move, now they can start trying to get that team to come over more. Yeah. And so it was one of those moments where we were so mad, like, why didn't it work the first time, God? Why would you, like, we were praying so hard that it would work for that first pick team. Like, why on our driving to the hospital, I was just so mad. But then to see, okay, God was using that. Wow. That, one team not being able to get it to now pave the way for future babies to be able to have that specialist team. Yeah. So, and that was a cool one to see immediately, like within the same day, like, okay, maybe you have a plan, God. Maybe there's a bigger picture to some of these things than what we're seeing.
It sounds like, other than just the miracle of Gideon, his story and what it represents as a whole, it sounds like what I'm hearing is that these moments that were terrifying, big moments, was just God creating new ways to help other babies. Like he was, like you said, setting a precedent that, okay, now these hospitals know this can be done. Yeah. Maybe you should start doing it this way. Yeah. And that's incredible.
Yeah. And for the doctors and nurses to see how well Gideon is doing, to be able to give hope to other families that want to try. Yeah. And even though they have to be honest, they have to.
They do.
They have to let them know the reality of, if your baby has a brain bleed, these are the options. Right. We have seen severe disability, but we've also seen Gideon, who's doing really well. He had a long journey. It's going to be a long journey, but there's a range, and you just have to be ready for anything in between. Yeah. And that's difficult to have hope and
realism. You have to have a realistic hope. Is that a thing?
Yes. Yeah.
So I know you said you wanted to talk about how important it was and how timely it was.
Yes.
Your church.
Yes.
And the support that they gave you through all this. And you had only just found this church.
Yes.
Just a few months before.
The fact that it was in our neighborhood, we didn't know about it until a friend of a friend told us about it. And so we went for the Christmas service. We're like, this is the place. But we didn't go until after all the holidays. And so, we didn't really meet anyone until January. Yeah. And so really we didn't start going to the church until January. And then Gideon was born in March. And the way our church rallied around us.
Hardly knew you.
They hardly knew us. And yet, the support that we still have, it has been so incredibly humbling. I forget when it was that this started. Our church asked us, like, would it be helpful if we had a weekly meal for you? And we were like, yes. And so for months, they coordinated. Someone in the church would make a meal or buy something and bring it to us once a week. And then once I had to go dairy-free for a while for Gideon. Yeah. And so even once that happened, they made dairy-free meals. Yeah. And
that's incredible.
It's incredible. Absolutely. And there was one Wednesday night that our pastor had said at our associate pastor, they're like, you know what? We're dedicating this Wednesday night to pray for Gideon. Oh, like a whole Wednesday night service. And everyone they had a praise and worship night and prayed for Gideon. The support. And so that was one thing I wanted to be able to tell you and to encourage, like, if you do not have a church or a support system of some sort, it is critical.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Not just if you have a NICU baby, but whenever you're going through the stuff that life throws at you.
Yes. And I want y'all to like hear what she's saying. It was one meal a week. Yeah. So a meal 1 week, that is not, on one hand, that's not a big thing, right? Because it's one meal. It probably took 2 or 3 days to eat it, 3 or 4 days. And then, you needed more food. It's not like it got them through the whole week. Guys, it was one meal a week, but that was huge to a family who was going through something like a crisis. Yes. A real life crisis of every day was unknown. Every day they could lose their son for 14 months. They didn't know, like it was, something so simple is such a big deal. And knowing that people are rallying and praying for you, that people have you, they've got your back, even though they hardly know you.
It was, and to know that so many, hundreds, if not thousands of people were praying for Gideon was, because we've heard of people that all over.
Because it was just spreading.
It was spreading. His story was spreading.
Yeah.
To know that, because there were so many days I couldn't pray.
Right.
It would start with a prayer and then it would just be, please God, please, please, please. And I would be sitting, because we couldn't even hold him for the first 16 days or something like that. And just like having my hands on his little incubator and saying, please, 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 please. And that's the only words that could come out of my mouth. And so that was one reason why his name was important to us.
Right.
Is because his name is Gideon. It means mighty warrior. And so there were times that I would just hold him and just say, Gideon, 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 Gideon.
Right.
And just knowing the power of his name.
And that's a prayer.
Yeah.
But and that's all you can. It's all you can do, right?
And sometimes it's just Gideon, Jesus, please, please, Jesus. Like those are like those 3 words where sometimes
he knows your heart.
Sometimes that's all you could do. Yeah. And in those moments, relying on other people's prayers, learning to really appreciate pre-written prayers, like a book of prayers.
Yes.
I love the book Every Moment Holy. Beautiful, beautiful book. I feel like it's like modern day Psalms.
I want to look into that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. And just some of the prayers that they would have were so helpful, because it just beautifully puts into words the emotions that you're feeling with different things. Yeah. And then just Googling scriptures. I had screenshots of several scriptures that I would just try and read over him every day for a long time.
Yeah. And my heart, and I think now you're to a place, I feel like I can tell you this. When everything that was going on with you, my heart broke for you, because I felt like you were robbed of the joy of what it is like to have a baby and to carry that baby full term. You were barely able to like feel him move and all of that. Like I
had felt him kick once before.
Broke for you. Yeah. Like it was what was taken from you in that sense was just it. That's crushing.
Yeah.
And I hope it's okay that I say that, because
it is. Yeah.
I mean that's painful, and it's okay.
Yes.
Because you are on the other side of it, and he's he's doing amazing. Yeah. But it's just things like that there are women who go through, not specifically but they have miscarriages, or they their baby doesn't make it full term, or they're full term and they still have a miscarriage. At that point it's just stillbirth, and that is, I think, one of the worst things that could ever happen. It's just women who are experiencing these kinds of things, they're going through this, they need prayer, they need community, they need support. Because like you said, sometimes you can't pray for yourself. And I've definitely felt that way. I've had those moments where I spiral or something, whatever I'm dealing with, I'm just like, I can't even pray.
There was a lot of grieving of what was missed.
Right.
grieving the loss of normal experiences, grieving, just like that. I didn't get to carry a baby to term. I didn't get to breastfeed. I didn't get to do a lot of these normal experiences that kind of feel like a rite of passage as a mother.
Right.
Now, lots of women adopt and don't have those either.
Exactly.
And so I had to just change my mindset, because from what I expected to what we got, because what we have is beautiful. Oh, yeah. It's just different.
And I wanted to ask you this later, but I really want to ask you now. Yeah. Because the whole purpose of this show is about living out our calling, right? And having a purpose and knowing what that is, or at least being on the journey to find it, right? Yeah. Because I can think of no sadder thing than living a life, especially as a Christian. Yeah. Probably the saddest thing is to have a faith that you don't live out a purpose. Wow. So, that's why we're here. Yeah. And I am just so curious. And you don't have to, and if you don't know, you don't know, but I'm just so curious, has this caused something in you to has something started brewing in you of a purpose or a calling or you know what I mean? Yes. Has it, because it did for me when I had my children. Yes. And I can only imagine something as momentous as Gideon's story.
I would have different ideas in the hospital of, things to do, things that I wanted to do, ministries or outreaches and things. But then I have found that once I got out of the hospital, there's this, I don't want to go back. Yeah. And I'm hoping that there will be a point where I can feel more confident and I can feel more at peace to say, okay, you know what? I am bringing muffins for all of the parents that are in the NICU or in the trach floor that we were on, doing that kind of thing to just help support parents. One interesting one that Jim and I always felt like we were called to foster and adopt one day. We thought we would have our biological children, and once they're a little bit older, then maybe that's whenever we would look at foster care. Yeah. But it was whenever we were in the NICU, we found out that babies are abandoned in the NICU. And it's one of those things that it's like, at first I was shocked. How could you abandon? But then going through it and realizing, if you don't have a church support system, if you don't have an amazing husband, if you don't have parents and sisters and all these people coming to help and make you food and help you with potentially other kids, and
I'm sorry, but if you don't have faith, if you don't have Jesus, I don't even know how you get through this world without Jesus. But I mean,
and so while we were there, it was really cool. It was, we had talked about foster, and that was something that I feel like God had placed on my heart back in high school. Yeah. And Jim was always like, yeah, on board with it. Like, sure. Yeah, okay, we'll do that. That he overheard nurses talking about. They were so excited because the baby was finally going to go to a foster family that had been in the NICU for 6 months. And all that baby had was a G-tube or a G-button. And that is fairly easy in terms of medical equipment. And so Jim came to me and he was like, oh my goodness, maybe that's what we're supposed to do.
Wow.
Maybe the foster care that we thought would be later in life, maybe it's meant to be NICU babies.
Oh my gosh.
And so that is one of, I think, the biggest calling changes that we've seen in ourselves is one day, we still don't know the timing, because we hope to have another biological child, but it took us a long time to get pregnant with Gideon, and then everything happened. Yeah. And so we don't know what that looks like. So we're giving it some time. And also to have Gideon, who's still, a bit medically complex, and then to have another medically complex baby on top of that. We're like, okay, yeah, we need to make sure we can handle it. But yeah, that's something that we want to do one day.
Too, in my mind, I always think about, I'm so bad about using always and never and all the time. I shouldn't say that. But when I think about something that I see a cause for like adoption, because my heart is also adoption too. I always think, how can I do it? And then I've learned that I need to start thinking, well, how can I help others do it? And how can I have people come along with me that maybe if I can't do it now, someone else maybe can.
Yeah.
And I almost wonder if it just bringing awareness around, see, I didn't know this. I didn't know that there were children in the NICU who are just abandoned, and then they're left to be fostered.
Yeah.
Or just, fostered to adopt, obviously, because then at that point they're not going to have, their family's not going to come back. So more than likely. And then you were also saying that just in the children's hospital, there are kids, and y'all, I might lose it at this point at the conversation. We weren't going to talk about this, but you started telling me about this, and now I feel like we have to. If that's okay. Yeah. I think this is very much a part of what people need to know around Gideon's story, because he is so blessed to have parents who are as involved as y'all are. You never left his side. Yeah. There are children, apparently, who have, like, you were on the trach ward, right? Yeah. And there are children whose families don't come to see them. They're just left.
For the most part. And sometimes it's because it's bad parents. Sometimes it's because it's a single mom who has 3 other kids.
Right.
Sometimes it's because they live an hour and a half away. So if you know of a family who's going through having a kid in the hospital, helping in any way to help them be able to spend more time with their kid. We were very blessed in the fact that I didn't have to work. Yeah. Like, I quit working the moment I went into labor. And Jim's job was extremely flexible with him.
Great.
Oh my goodness.
See, this is something that I just don't think we're aware of. I don't think we understand that there are just these children who and families. My heart is automatically going to go out to the child. Okay. I'm not saying that the parents don't matter here. I'm not going to say that they're doing anything right or wrong. I'm just saying, apparently there is a great need to either, I guess, if the hospitals even allow it, I would think allow people to come in and read books to the kids, even if they're just laying there, they're asleep, or whatever. I don't know.
Especially pre-COVID, they allowed. I don't now. I'm not sure what all protocol now that things have loosened.
Yeah. But reading books.
Yeah, because
if there's families that are showing up.
Yeah.
Taking food, or or putting them on prayer lists, or checking in with them, or saying, hey, here's some contacts of some local people, or people at local churches who want to pray for you if you have specific prayer requests. I mean, things like that, so they feel connected. They don't feel isolated. I mean, what a ministry that would be.
Yes.
To do that. Yeah. I mean, that's.
Yeah. And to encourage parents, if they have other kids, take care of the other kids. And specifically dads. Because dads are also they're needed. And because a lot of dads just kind of check out, the hospital doesn't expect anything of dads. And so then that gives dads the excuse to bail. I mean, Jim and I would be sitting next to each other, and doctors would just address me, only ask me questions, and just completely ignore his presence.
And I mean, I kind of get that. I mean, I kind of get to a degree. Moms are usually, they're like the go-to, right?
Yes.
They know. And that's normal.
Yes.
But I just think dads need to realize they are very much needed.
They are needed. They are wanted.
Yeah.
And just because the doctor doesn't address you does not give you an excuse to not be there for your kid.
Oh, yeah. No.
Yeah. I know. Lots of deep things, guys. I feel like there are some beautiful moments in Gideon's story. I don't know if you can add pictures to this, so if people are watching.
I really want to, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, his smile is just so sweet. He is such a funny little guy.
He's happy.
He is so happy.
So let's talk about that. What milestones has he hit since coming home? Like he's already broken every record or whatever, but what milestones has he hit?
So many. So whenever we first came home, he was 14 months old. He couldn't do tummy time without, because just everything is uncomfortable. He couldn't sit up on his own. There's a lot of things. So now he can pull the stand. He can crawl. Like, he is fast when he wants to crawl. Like, he can just like head down, like do. We got him a little walker, like a medical walker, and then this morning a gait trainer was delivered, and that really lets him like get around once he kind of really gets the hang of steering it. And so I think it's just a matter of time before he is walking and doing all of these things. His cognitive skills are really impressive. Other than his kidneys, we have every hope and expectation that he's, God willing, going to live an independent life. He's learning a lot. So
it hasn't slowed him down.
No.
Slow start. He had a lot to overcome.
Yes.
But it's like, okay, he's like, okay, guys, I'm just going to do my thing now.
Yeah.
And there's hopes too of the tracheotomy. That's not always going to be there.
Right.
And is the G button always going to be there?
It shouldn't be.
Okay.
Yeah. So the trach, we expect to get out next year. Yes.
That is exciting.
That is, we were expecting it to be years down the road.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah. I thought we were talking like 5, 7.
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yes. Nope. He has just flown through.
What would be, like, for anyone listening, what would be your hope that they walk away with from Gideon's story and from what y'all have been through?
Yeah. To have hope in difficult circumstances. And, we had a lot of people say, like, oh, I don't know how you could I don't know how you went through that. And it's just, you just do it. Like, you just say, we don't have a choice. This is what we're doing. And you do it.
Yeah.
And so I think my biggest takeaways would be find community. So they're there for you when you have a heart, whenever you're going through a season, but also so you can be there for others when they're going through a tough season. To hold on to hope and learn how to balance realism. Like, that is the hard, that is hard, is to have hope and realism at the same time.
Yeah.
And to reach out when you need help. Go to therapy.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Oh my goodness. Go to therapy.
Yeah.
I still go to therapy. It is life-changing when you don't even have to be going through a catastrophe in the moment. Like, it can be such a
everyday life is just hard.
Yeah.
So
and so just to being able to process through things with someone who's not going to judge you or give you advice.
Yeah. And they're going to be able to see it from a different perspective, an outsider's view. It is important. I definitely agree with that.
Yes. But yeah, for people to have hope in difficult circumstances, specifically for preemies and medically complex kids, that there is hope and there is still life with a medically complex child. And, even whenever I get frustrated with just all the things, I look at, the algorithms know that I look at every, medically complex special needs kid that comes across. And so, there are different ones that I follow that are, their circumstances are far more complex than Gideon's. Mm-hmm. And yet they're getting out, they're living life, they're doing it. And I'm like, okay, I have no excuse. I took Gideon to Target for the first time by myself just this month. And it was like I was like, all right, I did it.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it was an exciting. So now being able to just get out more, it doesn't have to be a 2-person job every time. And just because I've had to, acknowledge the trauma that I've been through and acknowledge my own fear and anxieties and just work through them and realize it's gonna be okay. The library is 2 minutes from our house. Like, we can do this.
Yeah, we can do this.
Yeah.
We can do this.
Yeah.
I love that. I've something that is important in my life, and I'm going to put this down for a second, is not running from the emotion.
Yeah.
The hard emotions, fear, anger, grief.
Yeah.
Depression. Depression's kind of an all-encompassing one. I shouldn't have listed that one, but the really hard, scary things that we feel, that into the depth that we feel them. It's so easy to push them down and to run away. And I know that in my life, the sooner that I'm able to acknowledge them and process them, the quicker I'm able to get through it and not judge the process.
Yes.
And not judge why I'm feeling them.
Yes.
And I think it's so important, and this is important for kids too, and I feel very strongly about this. You are okay and valid in your feelings. Actions are different.
Yeah.
How you handle your feelings, how you handle others when you're feeling the feelings, that's different. That's not always okay if you're cruel or hot-tempered or whatever. But your feelings are always valid. They're just not always telling you the truth. And that's a very different, those are two very different things. And same goes for kids. They're allowed to feel how they feel. It's just, we're not allowed to take certain behaviors and approve those. And something I want people to take away, I hope people take away, is that it is okay to wrestle through your emotions with God.
Yes.
Feeling anger, resentment, those feelings towards God are going to probably more than likely happen. Maybe not. Maybe, I have definitely felt those feelings myself towards God for different reasons. I have doubted his character. I have doubted his goodness. I have doubted his love. And not even necessarily for myself, just, towards in general. I have doubted God. And I sometimes, even when I was younger, I don't now, but I doubted his existence. So those things are normal. It's part of our humanity. And I think we need to wrestle through those with God. He expects us. He knows we're going through it. It's not a surprise to him. He wants you to take that to him. He wants to help you through it. He wants to put those people in your life, and he will, to help you process it. You just want to always have an openness to him about it.
I feel like I was never as honest with God as I was during this time. There were times it's like, how dare you let these babies, like, I am not worthy, God, of you answering my prayers. I get you not listening to me. But Gideon has done nothing. And you are letting him suffer. So please end his suffering one way or the other. And that was hard to pray, that one way or the other.
Right.
That is a hard place to be. But God can take our anger.
He's not scared of it.
He is not scared of it. He is not scared of our questions. He is not threatened by them.
No. It doesn't make him any less God.
No. And so by asking the hard questions, getting the anger out instead of letting it fester. Because there was some angry and some hopeless prayers that I had with God, and he took them and he said, I got you. And he said, this is hard, but there's a reason. Earlier, I don't know why we got the miracle, but we did. We're still believing for more miracles, but also trusting that if we don't, I had mentioned earlier, if Gideon needs a kidney transplant when he's older, that's okay. God's going to bring us through it. And it is adding to the testimony that Gideon has. And there will be, the Lord works for good for those who love him.
Yes.
He will work all things for good. He can take these terrible circumstances and somehow make it good. We may not see it, and it may not be the good that we would choose.
That's very important. That is key.
Yes. I would not have chosen this path,
though. No one
in
would've.
A million years.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
But it's been a beautiful, difficult path. And I've learned so much. And I'm a different person because of it. There were lots of times I always said, when Gideon comes home, I'd always talk to them, like, when Gideon comes home, we'll do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And they would never acknowledge
they
the
didn't
when.
like it. Yeah.
You could tell, because at that point it was not when, it was if.
Right.
And you could see it in their eyes every time that they wouldn't look me in the eye, even though they had every hope that that would happen. They knew,
right. They
had seen this many, many times that it didn't happen. But I knew that. I just intentionally said when, to have the hope and the faith that he was coming home. But I knew that may not happen.
Yeah.
And God will get me through it if it doesn't.
Right.
And so, yeah. I had written down a few things of what things you can do for families.
Yes.
So let me grab my phone here. Because I feel like that's one of the things that people always ask and always want to know, like, how can you help? It's hard to know what to do.
Yeah.
So I'll try and go through this list quickly.
Yeah.
First and foremost, food. We went through that. Food. That blesses people in ways that you have no idea.
Yeah.
Homemade or gift cards, either close to home or close to the hospital.
Yeah.
Yard care.
Oh, I never would have thought of that.
Yeah. Because there are times that you just don't have energy. Now, sometimes some people enjoy yard care and that's their stress relief. Mm-hmm. There are times that Jim looked forward to saying, okay, Saturday morning, I'm just going to mow the yard and having some form of normalcy.
Yeah.
So that would be a good one to ask.
Yes.
Because to some people, they hate it and they're like, yes, please. I don't have the bandwidth to think about it. Texting. I so appreciated whenever people would text and check in, even though I got a ton of text messages.
Yeah.
And one thing that was always really nice, whenever it was a text that just said, hey, praying for you, hey, thinking about you, I would love to hear how you're doing, but don't feel like you have to respond.
Yeah.
Having that little, but don't feel like you have to, was a relief, because then it wasn't a burden. Mm-hmm. It was just,
that's really good.
It was encouragement without the burden of needing to reply. Mm-hmm. Let's see. Oh, donating vacation hours. Like if it's a coworker.
Oh.
So Jim had dozens and dozens of donated vacation hours from coworkers.
Gosh.
Yes.
I never would have thought of that.
Yes. So if it is a coworker where you're like, you may not be super close and it feels awkward to do, to reach out in a lot of ways, but you can say, hey, talk to your manager and see if you can donate. Because Jim didn't work a full 40-hour week for a long time.
Wow.
Because between FMLA, which is family medical leave, and donated vacation hours. Oh my goodness.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Because that's your livelihood.
Yes. And that's why a lot of parents can't be at the NICU or the hospital, mm-hmm. because they have to work. Mm-hmm. And you have to eat and you have to work, and so donated vacation hours. This was kind of a fun one, a gift card to a nail salon or something, some other self-care. I started, getting my toes done once a month whenever Gideon was in the hospital. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for myself and get a pedicure.
Yeah.
And just, it was nice because you don't have to talk to anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so being able to provide that for a mom or whatever self-care.
Something about the actual parent, not just like who they are, like what they liked before all of this started happening in their world.
Yes. And if you want, especially so here's another gift card idea. We luckily live close enough that we were only like 30 minutes from the hospital. So we got a hotel twice when Gideon was in the hospital. And it was so nice to where it's like, he's napping. Okay, I'm going to go to the hotel and decompress for a little bit. And so giving gift cards to a hotel.
That's a really good idea too. Something I also would not.
Yeah. Because so it can be to a specific hotel or to like hotels.com or something like that. So that way, if they're having a long stay, even if it's just like, okay, you know what, they're having a really rough weekend, so we're going to stay in a hotel this weekend so we can actually get sleep and be there as much as we can. So I think that
those are some really good suggestions.
Yeah.
Also too, like along the lines of like the yard mowing is like having someone like, I'm going to have a house cleaner come by. When is a good day for that they can just come by and it's not going to be in your way.
Yes.
And they're going to clean the house. Just
yes,
that kind of stuff.
Things like that. Because you don't have the bandwidth to think about it and request it.
Yeah, no.
So taking care of other kids. So luckily Gideon's our only, but
childcare.
Yeah. I saw other families, and either you're in the hospital and you feel guilty for neglecting your other kids, or you're with your other kids and you feel guilty that you're neglecting your one in the hospital.
Lose.
Yeah. And so to either take the kids and do something fun or help them with homework, so that way whenever parents are with them, they're not having to do the boring task.
Yeah.
Doing those kinds of things, going grocery shopping.
Yeah. All of that.
Yeah. And then the last one is coffee or a coffee date. And this is one I did just a couple of times. Excuse me. And I did, like, it was once I was reflecting on all of this that I wish I would have asked for that more whenever people were reaching out. And I could have just texted a friend and said, hey, could you just come to the hospital and let's just have coffee?
Yeah.
Because you just lose touch with all of your friends. You're in this bubble for so long, and you're not going to functions, you're not going to things, and so you just kind of slowly lose touch.
Yeah.
And so if you have a friend in the hospital with a kid or just in a difficult time, just say, hey, can I bring you coffee? And then we can either sit and chat or
just drop it.
Yeah, or I can just drop it off. We can go for a walk. Because most hospitals have a coffee shop.
Yeah.
And so just having that.
A little bit of reality.
Yeah.
Or what was your reality?
Yes. Yeah. And just, I wish I would have thought to request that more. I think it could have been really good.
Those are really good ideas. Definitely.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's a need.
Yeah.
I mean, just knowing, and we all know people. I know people who are going through stuff. We all do. We're all at some point in our lives, there's people that are either in the hospital or, we are. So, I mean, there's always someone that could benefit from things like that. It was such a blessing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've enjoyed this.
Yes.
I've enjoyed listening to your podcast. It's been very uplifting and very.
I'm glad.
I've really, truly, I've enjoyed listening to it, all of the episodes, and so
that means a lot. I'm so glad.
Yeah,
I'm so glad. I'm so glad y'all joined us today. As always, if you have prayer requests, thoughts on future episodes, you can always email me at onecalledmama@gmail.com. I hope you all have a wonderful, blessed week, and I will be talking to you again very soon.
Bye.